Welcome, one and all, to a tale of truth. Or perhaps one of profound untruth. And this specific story begins, as many do, with the race of the Isle Tag. Now, the Isle Tag were, and are, a very advanced people. Or so they say, and they say a lot. For within the cave system they call home, there are many cracks of debate. Now, legend says that the Isle Tag came, long ago, from the sky. And that after a particularly nasty storm, they had taken refuge in a small mountain hollow. And they had found that they much preferred life inside, free from the rain and the wind and the daily struggles of prey and predator. So they began to dig, to sculpt the land to better fit their hand. And they, in turn, changed over the years to blend with their new rocky home. They shunned all that was natural, all that was wild, all that was dangerous. But, being a people of knowledge, they made the effort of sending out one of their clan on a bi-yearly basis. They were to leave, determined that the outside was, in fact, still nasty, still wild, and still dangerous. This is how our friend Tubo found himself outside, blinded by the sun, stunned by the vastness, and terrified of the unknown. He had not taken but a few hundred steps when it happened. Danger struck. A massive storm hit. A storm so powerful, its like had not been seen since the Isle Tag were first forced from flight. And the winds caught our Tubo's wings. And for the first time since legend, an Isle Tag took to the skies, quite against his will. Oh, how Tubo flipped and fluttered to no use. He was being taken away from home, into the wild. And then he crashed. And when he awoke, he was seemingly alone, covered in muck and slime. At least the storm was receding. Now you could only hear the raging nature somewhere in the distance. Scanning his surroundings, Tubo found that he was stuck square in some kind of bog. Slime and brown were all that surrounded him. Suddenly, various dripping limbs slipped out of that slime, itching to wrap themselves around our lost friend and snare him in. Being more built for debate halls than muddy brawls, Tubo blurted out,
Stop right now! I am deserving of some wording before you go grabbing and all that such mockery.
A face emerged from the slime, wild and gaunt from hunger.
It speaks. How tasty. What is it though? It has wings, but it neither fights nor flights.
If you put away your aggression, then I can satisfy that curiosity.
The creature, which I now understand to be a girdle, scratched its chin.
Mayhaps I can stall. Yes. I will stall until I knows whether or not it can be eaten.
Thunder cracked. The storm was not going to stay dead for long. Tubo listened, and an idea struck.
Oh, someone as wild and dangerous and scary as yourself certainly could eat me.
The girdle squealed in pained delight. It seemed to have heard enough, and once more swiped at Tubo.
A sweet tongue, sweet words, sweet taste. Yes.
No, wait right there.
Crack! The storm was close.
I spoke that you could eat me, but query yourself. This, should you or would you eat me?
Now this question was obviously absurd and made very little sense, but it puzzled the advancing girdle just enough that it paused. And that pause was all Tubo needed. Crack! The storm had arrived. A bolt of lightning hit the porous liquid. A screech pierced the air. This only brought Tubo a moment before the girdle regained its senses. But when it did, there was no one there. No funny little winged creature, no quizzes or queries, just its swamp. Infuriated, the beast emerged and yelled,
Would or should I? I will and I shall.
Hearing this, Tubo nearly began to shake in fear, but he'd managed to hold it in long enough for the beast to turn away. For, you see, Tubo had taken his moment to fold his wings beneath himself and blend in with a small bundle of stones nearby. A temporary solution, certainly, but the oil tag could survive for months on little to no food. And so, he waited. And as he waited, he saw a great many things. He saw the girdle's rage. He saw it turn to sadness, and then to desperation. The creature was starving, and still Tubo waited, and still Tubo watched. The creature, whom Tubo took to calling the Caretaker, had a temper as fickle as the weather, wild and uncontrolled. He saw the Caretaker at his worst and his best. He saw him feast on creatures and yet let others go free. Tubo saw him feed the bones of his victims to the mushrooms nearby, to cultivate the land. And when the Caretaker was bored, he would count his rocks and his mushrooms, and he would stack his rocks on one side and then the other, playing to pass the time. And he had a particular fondness for the strange red-capped stone, always stacking it above the others. In the end, things happened to the Caretaker, and he weathered them, good and terrible. And he, in turn, happened to others, in good ways and terrible. And all the while, Tubo waited, and Tubo watched. He watched when one day a terrible cold overtook the bog, and the Caretaker, too fond of his rocks and his mushrooms, refused to leave, as the bog froze over and all within its waters certainly perished. And only then did Tubo return home. He returned to tell his people that they were right. The world outside was a terribly, dangerous place to be. It was wild and unforgiving, and vast and beautiful. And in the end, isn't that just wonderful?